In the heart of Anambra, whispers of a name once gripped the streets with fear: Derico Nwamama. At just 22 years old, he had spilled more blood than a battlefield, and no one, not even the police, could stop him. Every monster has a beginning. Every name that brings fear was once just a face in the crowd. Before the blood, before the headlines, he was just Okwudilindiwe, a boy from the streets. The streets of Anambra, like many in Nigeria, are full of stories. Some rise with talent, others with education, but some, like Derico, rise with rage. They say Derico lost his parents young, left to fend for himself in a world that doesn't care about the poor. He hawked pure water, begged near market stalls, and slept beneath stalls when it rained. He learned early, in Nigeria, no one gives you anything. You must take it. He was smart, too smart for the life he had. He saw the big boys, the ones in shiny cars with guns tucked under their shirts, and he realized something. Fear is a currency, and he wanted to be rich. It started small: petty theft, pickpocketing in crowded markets, stealing bags off bus rooftops at dusk. But Derico was ambitious. He wasn't content being just another street boy. He wanted power, respect, fear. He joined a local gang, one of many that operated in the shadows of Onitsha. He learned how to handle weapons, how to move in silence, and most of all, how to kill. To Derico, murder wasn't personal. It was business. The fewer witnesses, the easier the escape. By the time he was 20, the name Derico was whispered in fear. Markets closed early, traders watched the shadows, and mothers told their children to behave or Derico would come for them. He had climbed out of poverty, but what he left behind wasn't innocence, it was humanity. He had become more than a thief. He was a ghost in daylight, a demon by night, and the blood trail had just begun. By the year 2000, Derico Nwamama was no longer just a name whispered in fear. He was a legend of violence, a shadow that turned bustling cities into graveyards. At just 22 years old, Derico had built an empire of blood. Not a political dynasty, not a business chain, but a criminal regime, fueled by rage and ruled by fear. He didn't just rob banks, he tore them apart. Security systems meant nothing to him. Armored guards were just warm-up targets. In Onitsha, traders stopped displaying their goods. Parents began pulling their sons out of school. Drivers refused to take certain routes, especially at night. In December 2000, Derico struck again. A 59-seater bus at Upper Iweka ambushed. After robbing the passengers, they did the unthinkable. They opened fire on the entire bus. 55 lives, gone in minutes. Only 4 survived. And they never slept the same again. At this point, Derico wasn't just a robber, he was an executioner, a ghost with no mercy. From the busy streets of Onitsha to the quiet towns of Umuleri, Derico struck like lightning, sudden, blinding, and always deadly. He taunted the police. He bragged that no man could kill him, and many believed it, because no bullet seemed to touch him. Urban legends began to rise. They said he wasn't fully human, that he wore powerful charms, that bullets melted before hitting him, that he had the blood of a snake and the heart of a lion. In the world of crime, there are no permanent friends, only shared interests until the bullets start flying. Before Derico's name struck fear across Anambra, one man ruled the underworld: Chiagina, older, deadlier, and with a longer body count, Chiagina was considered the most dangerous armed robber in the state. He operated in the shadows of Onitsha, commanding respect from fellow criminals and fear from law enforcement. But then came Derico, young, fearless, and absolutely ruthless. Where Chiagina robbed with strategy, Derico came with chaos. At first, the two found common ground, two kings of the same jungle. They formed an uneasy alliance, not built on loyalty, but on mutual opportunity. It worked for a while. Together, they executed robberies that made front-page news. They shared guns, targets, even hideouts. But it wasn't meant to last. You see, in the underworld, ego is more dangerous than a loaded gun. Derico wasn't just trying to make money. He wanted to own the fear. The partnership crumbled when Chiagina confronted Derico about his recklessness. Derico no longer followed plans. He shot civilians. He left trails. He made enemies and didn't care. Derico slamming a table, shouting, "The argument turned violent. They say it started over a stolen cache of weapons." Others say Derico didn't want to share the loot from a big score. But the truth, Derico was done sharing power. One day, in broad daylight, Derico cornered Chiagina after a botched heist. No more words, no more warnings. Derico emptied his gun into Chiagina. A hail of bullets, unforgiving and absolute. Blood splattered against rusted walls. Chiagina, the once untouchable kingpin, was now another corpse in Derico's growing pile. The message was clear. Derico would rule alone. Anyone who stood in his way would fall, friend or foe. Word spreads. Chiagina is dead. Police scratching their heads over the rising killings. To the people of Anambra, one devil was better than two. But Derico, he was no longer just a thief. He was a monster without a leash. From this moment, Derico stopped robbing for survival. He robbed for sport. He killed to maintain dominance. And in his twisted world, fear was respect. But his days were numbered, because something ancient, something fierce, was coming for him. The people had suffered enough, and so the governor summoned fire, the Bakassi Boys. Some say he sacrificed animals every full moon. Others claimed he used the blood of his victims to renew his protection. But beneath all, the myth was a brutal truth. Derico had become an apex predator, a young man drunk on power and addicted to killing. Blood-stained currency police standing helplessly at a crime scene. Over 100 lives were lost. Many of them police officers, fathers, sons, shopkeepers, all gone because one boy wanted to be feared. The people cried, but no justice came. The police tried, but failed. Derico was always one step ahead. His enemies, always. One bullet too slow. Something had to give. The fear was too loud, and soon the Bakassi Boys would hear it. But first, Derico had to kill his biggest rival. The people of Anambra were trapped. By day, markets emptied in. Terror. By night, silence was pierced by gunshots. Derico had become more than a man. He was a myth soaked in blood. The Nigerian police had tried. Operation Derico was launched, but what could they do against a ghost with a gun? Over 25 police officers had been killed. Derico was always one step ahead. His network stretched across states. His weapons outmatched the police. His threats delivered in broad daylight. And so, when the state could no longer protect its own, the people cried out, and the governor, Chinwok Mbadinuju, listened. He turned to a force that lived outside the rules, outside the law, but not outside the people's hearts. They were called the Bakassi Boys. Formed in Abia State, the Bakassi Boys were more than vigilantes. They were enforcers of street justice, feared, respected, believed to wield ancient powers. Rumors whispered they couldn't be shot, that no criminal charm could work against them, that their machetes never missed. Governor Mbadinuju gave them one job: hunt down Derico, dead or alive. The streets buzzed. Finally, fear had a rival, a bigger, older, ancestral fear. The people sang in the markets again, but for Derico, it was the beginning of the end. He didn't take it seriously at first. He mocked the Bakassi Boys, sent them warnings, even dared them to find him. "No man can kill me," he once said. But that arrogance would be his downfall. The Bakassi Boys responded not With words, but with blood. The first strike was in Abuja. The special anti-robbery squad, alongside the Bakassi Boys, raided Derico's residence. He escaped, barely, but two of his top men didn't. From that day, Derico knew. These weren't regular police. They moved like shadows, struck without mercy, and answered to no one but the will of the people. He moved constantly, never sleeping twice in the same place. His gang splintered. Fear was eating him alive. The hunter was now the hunted. Night scenes of markets with torches, whispering crowds watching the roads. The Bakassi Boys weren't just chasing a criminal, they were cleansing a curse. And on July 3rd, 2001, they finally caught him. They lay in wait, right at the Niger Bridge, and when the bus rolled in, they saw him, Derico, the terror of Anambra. The king of fear was now a prisoner. They got him. After months of blood, fire, and fear, the most dreaded man in Anambra State was finally in chains. It was July 3rd, 2001, and Derico's reign of terror ended not with a bang, but with silence and the cold grip of the Bakassi Boys. The same man who had dared the heavens, who had mocked the law and butchered the innocent, now sat in a corner, bloodied, silent, terrified. But the story wasn't over. Not until justice was done. Not until the people saw the face of their fear and spat it out. 6 days later, on the hot morning of July 9th, a convoy of Bakassi trucks rolled through the city of Onitsha, their mission clear, their machetes sharp. They stopped at the heart of the city, Ochanja Market Junction. Traders abandoned their stalls, market women dropped their baskets, children climbed shoulders. The air was thick, not with fear, but with vengeance. Then they saw him, not the monster, not the myth, just a man, broken, bleeding. Derico. Few had ever seen him, fewer believed he was real, but now he stood there, shackled, helpless, human. A Bakassi leader took the microphone, his voice cutting through the noise. "We are not here for politics, we are not here for money, we are here to restore order." Then he handed the mic to Derico. He looked around, and for the first time, he spoke. "My name is Odi, alias Derico. I beg you, good people of Anambra, don't kill me. I don't like evil. It was when I killed Chiagina that people thought I was strong. The crowd, unforgiving, shouts of liar, cries of murderer. They didn't want tears, they wanted closure." Then he named names. He said a national assembly member had protected him. A state House of Assembly rep funded him. Even a local government chairman gave him safe haven. The crowd boiled. The Bakassi Boys did not flinch. And then, without warning, the first machete fell. Blood, screams, silence. His head rolled to the dusty floor. His blood painted the ground red, and the people cheered. Justice, in its rawest, cruelest, and most ancient form, had come. Derico's body was chopped to pieces, burned in front of the same people he once terrorized. It was over, a reign of fear buried under flame and machete, and from his ashes the people found peace. The head had rolled, the body was burnt, but in the ashes of Derico's end, a nation still grappled with the wounds he left behind. Some called it justice, others called it savagery, but everyone agreed on one thing: Derico was gone. But what followed was a different kind of reckoning, not with Derico, but with ourselves. The Nigerian police was furious. They had demanded Derico be handed over for a fair trial, but what they got was a public execution. And so they struck back. Several Bakassi Boys were arrested for their role in the killing. The people, they were enraged. After months of bloodshed, they had seen justice with their own eyes. And now that very justice was on trial, it took the governor's intervention and a massive public outcry. to free the Bakassi Boys. But the question remained. Why did it take vigilantes to do what the law couldn't? Why was a boy of just 22 able to build an empire of fear, death and blood right under the nose of the state? To understand Derico, you must understand Nigeria's forgotten youth. Boys born into poverty, raised on survival, schooled in the ways of the street, and ignored by the systems meant to save them. What made Derico a monster wasn't just bloodlust. It was neglect, abandonment, and a society that handed power to the most violent because there was no other path to survive. Perhaps if the streets of Onitsha had offered jobs instead of guns, if the government offered hope instead of silence, Derico might have been a name lost in the crowd. But instead, he became a legend, a horror story, a warning. He became a lesson carved in blood about what happens when the youth are left to rot, and justice is a price only the rich can afford. Today, we remember him not to celebrate him, but to remember what we must never allow again. That no child should grow up thinking crime is their only path to greatness. That no city should wait for machetes to fix what law and order refused to touch. Derico Nwamama is gone, but his shadow still lingers. Let it remind us that the battle for justice must be fought not just with weapons, but with opportunity, dignity, and truth. Some stories fade quietly into the shadows of time, but others are reborn through the lens of a camera, rewritten as legend. One of those stories was Derico's. Shortly after the Bakassi Boys brought Derico to a bloody end, Nollywood picked up the thread and breathed new life into his tale. Directed by the legendary Lancelot Odua Imasuen, Isakaba premiered in 2001 and changed Nigerian cinema forever. Isakaba wasn't just a movie, it was a movement, a dramatic retelling of real-life horror, packed with action, superstition, and the fierce justice of the streets. The name Isakaba itself was a clever anagram, a flip of Bakassi backwards, symbolizing a world where the hunted became the hunters. Viewers were mesmerized. For the first time, cinema captured the urban mythology of the Bakassi Boys, the black-robed vigilantes who read justice in blood and carried machetes blessed by mystics. In Isakaba, the villain, clearly inspired by Derico, was more than just a man. He was an evil spirit, a dark force, empowered by black magic and bullets. But behind the cinematic flair, Isakaba asked deeper questions. Questions about a system that failed its people, about a society where crime grew faster than opportunity, and justice had to be taken into the people's own hands. The film blurred the lines between hero and villain, between vengeance and justice, between fiction and the blood-stained truth. When a man dies, sometimes his story dies with him. But in other cases, the story becomes something else. A memory, a warning, a whispered name that haunts corners of the city. Derico Nwamama's death did not end the story. It amplified it. For years after his public execution, his name would still echo in alleys and behind closed doors. Children were told to be good, or Derico would come for them at night. Traders locked up earlier. Even police officers spoke his name in hushed tones, not out of respect, but out of fear that evil like his might return in another form. And then came the blame. Some said Derico was a product of poverty, a country where a young boy with no guidance could so easily become a monster. Others blamed the system, the corruption, the loopholes, the culture of impunity that allowed boys like Derico to grow into gods of fear. You see, Derico wasn't born evil. He was born Nigerian, born into a world that failed to offer many boys a path other than violence. So we ask, was Derico a villain or just a symptom? And what about the Bakassi Boys? To some, they were saviors, ghosts in black robes who cleaned the streets when the police had failed. To others, they were just another mob, judge, jury, and executioner in one. Their justice was swift, brutal, uncompromising. And for many, it was necessary, because in a place where courts release killers with the right bribe, mob justice became justice. Today, Derico's ghost lingers, not in the fear he once commanded, but in the lessons his story offers. In every broken streetlight, in every orphaned boy selling sachet water on the road, his story asks us, how many more will we create? We remember him not to glorify, but to remind that evil thrives in silence and injustice gives birth to monsters. But maybe, if we tell his story loud enough, we can stop the next Derico before he ever picks up a gun. Because stories don't die, they evolve, and the ones we remember shape the world we build.